I just got back from seeing Rambo, Last Blood.
I didn't.
I'll be right back with my non-spoiler review. Hi folks, welcome back to Pop Up Fizzle. I'm Jeff.
I'm Heidi.
And we are here, or at least I'm here, to talk about Rambo Last Blood. Now I'm going to give you my thoughts about the movie itself, and then Heidi and I are going to talk a little bit about the movie in general, even though she didn't see it, because what I want her to weigh in on has nothing to do with the movie itself. I don't think I've talked about my history with Rambo on this channel. Like most kids my age, I grew up watching those Rambo movies. First Blood, I don't think I saw until it was out on video or something, and then by the time the second one came out, I think I saw that in the theater. Then I saw the third one in the theater, and then 30-something years went by, or 20-something years, or whatever, without a Rambo movie. Then John Rambo came out 8 years ago? Has it been that long? I don't know if it's been that long. I could be making all this up for all you know. Came out. It was good. It was about. It was also very violent, kind of ultra-violent, and not to be confused with Ultraviolet. That's a really bad movie.
It's a completely different.
Yeah, yeah, it was ultra-violent, but still kind of in keeping with who we knew the John Rambo character to be. Fine. These movies have never been a great cinematic tour de force. I mean, you don't go to a Rambo movie to see Shakespeare. You don't go to a Rambo movie. You're imagining Sylvester Stallone quoting Shakespeare.
Reciting Shakespeare. Yes, I am.
I knew exactly what was going on in that mind. Yeah. So you don't go to those movies for that kind of thing, and you know that going in. So I say all that to say I kind of went into Last Blood with a bit of a question mark in my mind because, and I don't even know if you and I have talked about this yet, but I had no idea this movie was coming out until they dropped the first trailer for it. Like, I hadn't heard anything, like nothing happened. And then all of a sudden it was coming and almost here. And by the way, here's the trailer. And I was like, whoa, I had no idea this thing was coming.
So just to be clear, my history of Rambo is having never seen any of the movies.
Well, yeah.
I offered to go see Last Blood with Jeff because that would be in keeping with my history of all movies with sequels, seeing the sequel or the last one first and then seeing the rest. But I mean, I kind of have, because I grew up in that era, kind of have some background and history an inkling of the history of that character and basically what he had gone through. So I mean, I can speak to generalities, but not necessarily the movie specifically.
Yeah, but also or at least I said to you at the time that you brought it up, it'd be better for you to see Ad Astra because I felt like we would have more to discuss. Now, it turns out I was wrong, probably, but and that review will be dropping shortly anyway. But no, I just figured it was probably a throwaway goodbye to the character kind of thing. No need for you to go. Seemed like it was kind of done under the radar, so I was expecting it to not be worth talking about. But, I'll go see it because I've seen all the other ones. So I did go to see it. But before I went to see it, I saw a bunch of reviews dropping for this film. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. So before we get into all of that sort of controversy, I want to tell you what I thought about the movie. Going in as a blank slate with no real knowledge of what to expect from this movie other than having seen the trailer, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I mean, it was exactly what I would expect from that kind of movie. It was a little bit different, had a little bit of a Home Alone vibe going on. In the sense that, he kind of makes it to where the bad guys have to come to him. We see that in the trailer. It's not that surprising. And he set traps and stuff and whatever, and that's a big portion of the movie. Well, for me, I didn't mind that it was different than other Rambo things. We've seen him in the jungle. We've seen him in a small town. We've seen him in other settings. This was just something kind of new. So I didn't mind any of that. I didn't find any of the acting to be atrocious or off-putting. I didn't find... there's one scene, probably not a scene that you will readily connect with it, but I'll explain it a little bit because it's not spoilery at all. There's one scene that pulled me completely out of the movie. Completely out of the movie. And it was a dumb choice on the part of the director, or maybe a second unit director, or whatever. But beside that, I thought the movie was shot well. I knew where everything was. I never thought, oh, where is he now in relation to that thing? Sometimes movies have that problem. Didn't have that problem with this. Liked the supporting cast in the movie. Paz Vega is in the movie just for a brief period of time, but she's good in it. Overall, on our rating scale of fizzle, meaning it's a bad film, don't waste your time. Pop, meaning it's decent, definitely stream it when you get a chance, but don't necessarily spend the big bucks. Or double pop, meaning rush out and see it at the theater now. I would give it a solid pop. It was definitely worth seeing. I had a good time at the theater. I don't think it necessarily needs the big screen treatment. I don't think any of the Rambo movies have ever needed the big screen treatment, but you know, it is what they are. And if you're a John Rambo fan, if you're a fan of that character, whether from the original novel or from the movies, which have very little relation to that novel, then go see it. Have a good time. I think you'll enjoy it if you like the character. But it's not anything that you necessarily have to spend the big bucks on. So that's my review. But I will tell you, before we jump into controversy, I want to tell you the one thing that took me out of it. It was a silly scene. It's not a spoiler. There is a scene where a character is in a vehicle, and they're driving one direction, then make a choice to turn around and drive the vehicle in another direction. If I had to guess, I would guess that this was a pickup shot done at a later date. Maybe they didn't have the actor for a long enough period of time where they felt like they could get them in a car and get out to a stretch of road and get the permits and do all this stuff. But the green screening or whatever it was that they did in that car ride is like old school I Love Lucy going to Hollywood with Ricky, something being projected behind the car kind of thing. And it looked so obviously not real. Whereas the rest of the movie, the cinematography was just fine. Wasn't spectacular. Didn't make me want to write letters to my congressman and say, everybody should hold this movie in high regard. It should be, whatever. Nothing like that. I don't think congressmen have anything
I was
to do
going to
with
say,
that.
I'm not sure congressmen. Actually, I don't know what they do.
I don't
honestly.
either. Not much.
We know what they're supposed to do.
But anyway, nothing about it stood out, really. It was just, I was just in. But that one scene was so hokily done that I was like, why? Why? I mean, like, you've got all these other great shots that work. Why was this the solution to that? Like, you could have gone without having that scene and we would have understood that character ended up where they ended up. We didn't need it. And it, especially on the big screen, looked so hokey and fake that it was pretty sad.
But they had to have a driving scene.
I guess. But I enjoyed the movie for what it was. Again, didn't go in expecting a whole lot. Stallone was John Rambo, just like he always is. It was fine. But apparently there's some controversy about this film.
Because he didn't do Shakespeare.
Right.
I would love to see Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Have you ever seen Oscar?
No.
It's not Shakespeare. But it is Sylvester Stallone in kind of a gangster thing. And it's kind of a comedy. It's kind of cute. It works.
Okay.
Anyway, so definitely plays to his strengths. Okay. But I'm talking about Rambo.
Yes,
Last
I
Blood.
assume.
So before I went to the movie, I see a review from a magazine that I won't name, or at least an online magazine that I won't name, saying that Rambo Last Blood, that Rambo Last Blood's hero is a hero for the Trumpian era. And I just remember sitting there looking at the tagline or the headline of that article going, wait, what? What does modern day President of the United States have to do with this movie at all? Turns out nothing, because I went to the movie. Mm-hmm. I've also seen several headlines that said that it was a racist film, because apparently because the bad guys hail from Mexico in the movie. And I'm like, well, okay, one, bad guys have to hail from somewhere.
This is true.
They've hailed from Russia, they've hailed from Vietnam, they've hailed from all kinds of things in these movies before. I don't know why this is particularly bad. Also, the movie's very clear that there are many people still living in Mexico and who live here now that are not the bad guys. The bad guys are very clearly, in this film, sex traffickers and people up to no good. Drug runners, sex traffickers, whatever. And they're very clearly separated from all the other good people of Mexico that wish that those sorts of things weren't happening where they are. So a lot of what I saw had to do with that, and as if those people were being demonized for being south of the border. And I didn't find that at all. I went to the movie and I was kind of looking for it. I was like, okay, well, if everybody's shady, if there's some hokey speech about the wall or some, then maybe I would go, okay, I see how they put those things together as being some sort of. I did not see anything like that. It was just people looking for something, and because they were looking for it, found enough things that they could thread together to make something. Two of the only people that he even remotely cares about in this movie are both from Mexico. The one person who helps him do the good work that he does, and by good work, I mean killing sex traffickers. The person who helps him the most in this quest is another Mexican. She's an independent journalist played by Paz Vega. That's not really giving anything away. And she is quite helpful and loves her country and is very upset that this kind of thing is going on and not only has affected her, but is affecting her country. These are the good guys. So out of the 4 people that we have to root for in this movie, 3 of them are Mexican, and then John Rambo. So I feel yes, the bad guys are also Mexican, but they're criminals and sex traffickers and pimps and drug runners, and yeah. So when you're saying things like that in a title of your video, of your print review, of whatever, you need to back that up with something other than, well, the bad guys were Mexican. Because you're not mentioning that
the good guys are too.
The good guys are too. And you're not mentioning that literally the only people worth caring about in the movie are Mexican. John Rambo admits himself that he's a monster, that he's a broken man, that he's done terrible things. So he's not even claiming to be the hero of this piece.
Well, the unfortunate thing is, in this day and age, people just read headlines and don't read the rest. And
right.
Of course, if they read the headlines and are like a lot of people on the internet, will just read the headline and make that snap decision right there. Oh, I won't go see that because it's racist. But without reading the rest and without knowing what it's actually about, which is unfortunate because I feel like that's a lot of what happens on the internet in general, is that people are only willing to read headlines. They're not reading to read in depth. They're not willing to do research
right.
to back up what their claims may be, or research as to what the online people presenting information may have gotten, where they may have gotten that information from. So I found that really difficult.
I've since seen that the writer of the original Rambo novel, First Blood, has sort of disavowed this movie, and it's like he thought it was stupid and it should never have been made and whatever. I guess he sold the rights, so he doesn't get a lot of say in that kind of thing. But if he's cashing that check, I find it hard to take that too seriously.
Yeah.
Also, the whole notion of trying to hold 90s action, 80s, 90s action fare to today's standards is kind of ridiculous. This is a movie franchise that's been going for a long time. It is what it is, and I would argue that if you go to see it, you kind of know what you're going to get. So if you're saying that, well, it was over-the-top violence and that violence is directed at Mexicans, well, it's also been directed at Vietnamese and at Russians and at any number of people. But the point is that in these films, those are the enemy in this context. And this is a highly stylized, fantasy-like thing. Yes, it's, he's a Vietnam vet. They keep reminding us of that. It's a thing, certainly that ties to reality. But I dare you to watch Rambo 2 or Rambo 3 and think that they're representing some form of actual reality. They are highly fantasized notions of both masculinity and of that sort of warrior vibe. Now, that doesn't mean it's not rooted in some reality in places, but it's not. It's like trying to hold a Batman film accountable for real world vigilantism.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly. And I feel like a lot of the reviewers that are saying those kinds of things can't be taken really seriously because it's like they were purposefully ignoring parts of the film in order to underscore their points. And I think that's kind of shady no matter who's doing it. This is not a great movie. You're not hearing me say that. I don't think it is. And if it's not your kind of thing, don't waste your time with it. That's fine. I don't need to see more money in Stallone's pocket. I don't care one way or the other. But when you're telling people not to go see it because it's toxic masculinity or it's racist or whatever, give me a break. Unless you have something that you can point to and prove it without ignoring other things that disprove it, it's hard to take you seriously on that front. I also think there's a problem, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, there's a problem with modernity that we want to view everything that happened in the past as far as entertainment through the lens of what's now and how we understand things now.
Yeah. For example, I actually just read a headline on my Facebook wall that there are some schools and school districts that are taking To Kill a Mockingbird off of reading lists, and because it makes people uncomfortable. It's supposed to.
Yeah, it should make you uncomfortable.
That is one of the best books I can think of to enter into a discussion about race relations, how it was, how it's progressed, where there still needs to be work.
Sure.
So I can't imagine pulling that off the shelves because someone's uncomfortable. I would implore you to read it because it makes you understand the history of why everyone's just uncomfortable today. You need to understand what was bad.
Sure.
What was really bad, and then where we've taken it from there and where we still need work.
And we see cycles of this going through all the time. Somebody wants Mark Twain's work pulled out of a library. Someone finds that something in an old film is irresponsible and shouldn't be shown or whatever. I mean, I'll give you a real world example. I love the movie Holiday Inn with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. That movie has a blackface number in it. Okay, I have a problem with blackface, clearly. I understand that is offensive, clearly. If someone, Trudeau, comes out with photos in blackface, then I'm going to say the man should be removed from office. This shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. No argument from me. However, they did not think the same way that we think today in 1930,
whatever that was.
Yeah, whatever year that was. I don't remember when Holiday Inn was released.
Basically almost 100 years ago.
Right. So to them, that wasn't, they didn't understand that they were being offensive. Now, maybe it still wasn't right. I don't know. I don't have the perspective of living in that era. And certainly I can't judge somebody for being willfully evil versus innocently ignorant. I don't have the data to back either one of those up. So I watch Holiday Inn, I cringe when that number goes, or I fast forward through it. But what I don't do is throw the movie away. And I don't say it doesn't have historical significance because it has that atrocious scene in it. And I don't say, well, the next time they put that thing on Blu-ray, they need to cut that scene out of there. I want to see that movie the way that it was intended. If I'm uncomfortable with something, then I will make the choice to skip it. I will make the choice to skim over it. But I won't expect for them to just throw away a part of history because it makes me uncomfortable. I think we have a tendency to do that more than we know. And I think sometimes it's really based on what makes us uncomfortable versus what makes somebody else uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Things that plenty of other people are fine with make me uncomfortable. But I don't expect everybody to cater to what I think is uncomfortable. I think that would be a mistake, and I think it's a mistake when other people do it as well. So, I don't know. I feel like a lot of this thing with Rambo Last Blood is sort of an embarrassment at what was considered masculine in the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
Or whatever. Okay, well, then maybe the movie's not for you. I get it. But throwing out toxic masculinity to get people to stop seeing it. Throwing out labels to sort of as warnings to people to stay away is kind of silly. Let people see it and decide for themselves whether or not they like it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And if you're going to argue that something's racist or homophobic or transphobic or any number of the things that seem problematic for people, then back it up. Say why it is and be open to let people disagree with you about why they see it differently. Anytime we're shutting out voices, I think the world's becoming a worse place.
And I have a problem with definitions of hatred and phobic, but we're getting way into
yeah.
into things. Yeah. But the thing is, there's a difference between not understanding, not agreeing, and hatred and phobia. There's a big, wide gulf between those things. So calling somebody phobic and having somebody who doesn't understand or doesn't agree are still very, very different.
There are also differences between saying things and meaning things. The whole thing with comedians lately, there are a lot of things that get said in the name of comedy that I find repulsive, and so I don't see those comics. There are other comics that say things that other people find repulsive that maybe I don't. But to me, they should be free to say what they want to say and then let the audience judge with their wallets and whatever else whether or not they want to continue to support that person. But I don't think anybody should say, well, they should lose their spot on this network or they should lose this job or that thing. It's their job to be a little bit shocking. It's their job to make you think about things. It's their job to push your buttons a little bit. And I think sometimes we just get so wrapped up in our own feelings about things that we forget that not everybody thinks like us. And I think that's why it's important. And Heidi and I, if you've been watching this channel for any period of time, we don't talk politics, we don't take sides, we don't want politics in our entertainment.
Nope.
We're not interested in that.
Nope.
Okay? But, one of the things that happens, unfortunately, is that if you take a side, one side or the other, and you're somebody who's not willing to listen to somebody on the other side, then the whole world gets very adversarial. And we see a lot of that anyway. I don't want it in my entertainment for sure, but I really don't want it in my life either. I have plenty of friends who think really differently than I do.
Yeah.
There are plenty of issues and things in life that Heidi and I think very differently on. If we just stopped communicating with each other and stopped talking things out and working things out, then we wouldn't have a partnership and we wouldn't have a marriage. So it's silly to shut people out and shut people off, tune people out for thinking differently than you. And I think the same goes for your entertainment. I don't agree with every song I listen to. I don't agree with every movie I see, but I take it and I process it for what it is, and then I have conversations with people like Heidi and people like you about what I think about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So, bringing it all back to Rambo, don't just read headlines. If you want to see it, go see it. If you are just not interested in that type of movie, don't see it. I have really never been too interested. I just wanted to go see the last one just because it would be funny yet again to see a sequel before anything else. But I would have gone into it with an open mind and been able to make a judgment based on it.
And also, if, again, sort of through the lens of modernity, I think there's this thing where you don't know somebody's backstory or how they ended up in a place or and my argument to that would be, if you're selling women into sex slavery, I don't care what your story is. You deserve a machete to the face. And that's what John Rambo really is all about. Yeah. So, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
No, Die Hard. Die Hard.
Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Die Hard's the Christmas movie.
Sorry. No, I just was thinking about what a swell thing to end on.
Yay, machete
Sometimes
to the
people
face.
need a machete to the face. Anyway, those are our thoughts on Rambo Last Blood, or mine anyway, and Heidi's thoughts about sort of the controversy. I just wanted to have her here because these are exactly the kind of things that we love talking about, and sometimes the camera's not on, and we don't have those conversations in front of you. We'll try to be better about that. Look for our review of Ad Astra. It should be coming up soon, shortly after you see this. And until next time, folks, if you like this video,
Hit the thumbs up.
Consider subscribing to the channel. Why aren't you doing that already? What's the deal, man? Anyway, that's it for us. Until next time, folks.
Bye.
Bye.